I want to hear lawyers talk like that. Like I really I want to get them to be like to talk from the narrative about maybe they'll talk about a case they like. Maybe they'll talk about like anything in the law and maybe they'll talk about themselves. Maybe they'll give me the story.
Law school taught you the law, but it didn't teach you this, how to connect. Be that one lawyer who shows up different, the one clients trust, the one they never forget. I'm Neal Goldstein, and this is That One Lawyer Podcast. Let's get started. Today's guest is an attorney, a community builder, and the founder of a platform that changed how lawyers see themselves and each other. Benjamin Gold, better known as Benny Gold, is the creator of Lawyer Stories, a global community and podcast that has featured thousands of personal journeys in the legal world. He's interviewed icons like Gloria Allard, Ben Crump, brought together lawyers from around the world, and shown us that behind every degree is a story worth telling. He's also someone I'm proud to call a friend, and he wrote the foreword to my second book, Who's in the Waiting Room for Personal Injury Lawyers. Benny, welcome to That One Lawyer Podcast.
Neil, thank you so much for having me. This is great. I really appreciate it. And by the way, that was very nice opening statement. And congratulations on launching your podcast. I know this is a long time coming. But somebody of your caliber and experience should definitely have a podcast. So
Well,
congratulations to you.
thank you. If you want to keep on going, you can keep on going.
I
So far,
will.
you're
I
doing,
will.
so
Let's
far
talk
you're
about
doing
the
great.
events. Let's keep on going. We'll talk about the events now. And all right, go ahead.
So far, you're doing great. Benny and I met a couple of years ago. In fact, let me just tell everybody that, everybody knows how I always, I always talk about sharing your story, telling your story for so many reasons. It has such an impact on everybody that for me, was probably the number one thing that I could do to connect with other people. And it's at some point I was on, I think it was on Instagram, and I saw Benny's platform.
Yeah.
And I was just amazed that he too was talking about the same thing and actually built a huge following on the platform, which we're going to talk about in a bit. So Benny and I got together, we connected really well. And we've been good friends for the last couple of years.
Yep.
And hopefully we'll be good friends for a long time after that.
Mhm.
So Benny, how about you share a little bit of your own backstory so that the people watching this or listening to this, whatever they're doing, can know a little bit more about Benny Gold.
Well, thank you so much. And yeah, it was absolutely a privilege and so cool to meet you. You came out to Worcester. We got dinner and right away, like hearing the New York accent, my roots are New York. I was like, this guy, like, I feel like he's like an uncle or a cousin or something. Like I feel like I'm related to him. It was really cool. And then it just like it just kept going. And now we're in like contact like regularly. So, I appreciate you a lot, Neil. And where do you want me to start with like the story? Like, do you want me to start like
Well,
tell me?
why don't you start where you feel
Oh
comfortable?
boy. Yeah. I mean, I'm somebody so I feel like I'm a sociologist at heart, right? You want me to get into like the lawyer stories thing? Neil?
Why don't you start from the beginning, whatever you think
Yeah.
the beginning of this journey is?
Right. So, I felt I grew up in Portland, Maine, and then I went to UMass Amherst. And there I recognized that in the legal studies department at UMass Amherst, which I loved. I mean, we had these ridiculous erudites, I think that's how you pronounce it, professors who would come up there and they just start talking about the law and sociology and the law. And, they were well studied and you just couldn't miss a word that they were saying. Right. So that drew my interest. And I took a legal writing class there and I was like, wow, this is so interesting. Like the precedent of cases and how cases kind of come together and form the next set of cases and that sort of thing. And then I took a year off after UMass with the thought of going to law school. Like I figured, why not? Right. So I literally, Neil, I went on to eBay and I purchased case books, a contracts case book. And I think it was a property case book on eBay, like some old, just so I could read it on the beaches of Old Orchard and see if I liked it. I applied to law school. I didn't have like a great score. I got my GPA up in the last in the last year at UMass. And so I ended up going to law school. Law school was the experience there was okay. Like I did well in some classes. I wasn't top of the class by any means. I mean, I did okay. I think like I wish I would have, in hindsight, had like somebody guiding me along more, or took it a little more seriously in a way. So basically, all along, I've been like a sociologist at heart. Like I love the idea of law school. I love law and society. And then, we move on. It was a little bit of a struggle for me to get a job to like at a law school. I didn't have like somewhere to turn, like a job to go into, anybody who was going to teach me. And look, let's be clear. Like some people need that mentor. Other people don't. Other people just have what do we say, the chutzpah to hang a shingle and to just say, hey, I'm going to do it. I don't care. I really was just like, I didn't even know what state to take the bar in. You know what I mean? I was like one of those. Now I feel like I have good advice to give people 20 something years later when they DM me on lawyer stories. I can definitely share some advice due to my experiences. Do you want me to keep going?
Sure. Why
Yeah.
not? Go ahead.
So anyway, I passed the bar, moved to Connecticut, and I still don't have really that legal job, but I found a job working I was sitting, okay, so this is kind of a story within itself. You could ask questions. You could stop me, Neil, if you want to. So I moved in with a buddy from law school in Connecticut, and he had bought a house, and I passed the Connecticut bar, and I was sitting there, and he said to me, I was looking on Craigslist for a job one night. And I came across this job, legal department at a public housing authority. So I had to look it up. What is this? All right. So it's in New Haven. I go there it was actually through a temp agency, right? Neil, have you ever heard this story before or no?
No,
Okay.
but
So,
even if I did, everybody else didn't hear
all
it.
right. So it was through a temp agency. I go to the temp agency and I say, I'm an attorney. Like I'm looking for a job. And they're like, oh, well, it's with housing at a housing authority. So I say, oh, is that like helping people secure housing, like lower income people secure housing? And the person looks across the desk and they're like, actually, no, it's like evicting people and doing like that. And I'm like, I could do that too, because I was so hard up for like a legal job that I wanted to learn some area of the law. Right. So
Right, right.
basically, I got this job at the New Haven Housing Authority for like 4 years in the legal department. It was great. I got a lot of experience, some highs and lows. I did some government contracting. I went to court to do landlord tenant, and then I went over to another housing authority for about a year. So I spent like 5 years. So I'm in this housing authority business, which I never really, I think people just like kind of fall into it. I don't think anybody like really plans to go into it. So I find a job back in Massachusetts, Neil, that's like, closer to Maine where I'm from. And I say, okay, like this is the assistant director of a housing authority. This is like a step up. I'm like, yeah, I'll just apply. I applied right before it was due. Went to interview. My boss, the guy who interviewed me, was incredible. He was also a UMass graduate, and thank goodness for him, he hired me. So I moved back to Massachusetts, which was great. And then eventually he left the job 3 or 4 years later, and the board of commissioners approved me and voted me in as the executive director. So now I'm still actually the executive director of 5 public housing authorities in central Massachusetts. So that's sort of where we are now. Along the way was lawyer stories, but I can get into that when you're ready.
Yeah, well, yeah, maybe it's a good moment to break because I just wanted to
Yeah.
ask you about law school. You and I have had
Jeez. All right, going way back.
you,
Yep.
you and I have had discussions about law school and how they love to talk up big law and
Yeah.
their erudite professors. What did you feel about law school? Did you find it, looking back at it now, did you find it a positive experience? Do you think something was missing?
Wow. I think for me, yeah, I mean, I don't think it was super positive for me. I mean, I think I loved being there. I loved the work. I think I got kind of I take accountability for it too. Most of the accountability. I think I got sidetracked by a lot of like personal and social things going on there. But I also think like I could have been helped along a little bit, and I could give you a story about that if you'd like to hear it.
Sure.
Yeah. So basically, Neil, there was this one day that after first year law school, I didn't have the best grades. Like many people, they're still adjusting. There's a curve, especially when you're at like, a lower tier school. They're trying to weed everybody out. So, and no hate on my law school. I think they had a good staff, whatever. But there was a sign that said finding jobs for 100% of our students. 100% of our students. So I was like, oh, this is great. So I went to the career services. I said, hey, I saw your sign. Like, I'm going to need a job this summer. Like, Can you help me out? The guy looks on the computer, sees my grades, and says to me, well, I think you ought to work on getting your grades up. So is something that sort of left a bad taste in my mouth about that. So it was a little bit of a struggle. I don't, like I said, I take some accountability, but some of that, I think it was pretty negative.
Yeah. And so, and I'm going to come back to that a little later because I think what you've done now is what you ask a lot of your guests to do, and that is be a little vulnerable. And
Yep.
so I appreciate that. So,
Right.
where did this? Everybody's graduating law school, trying to run to a big white shoe law firm if they can. If not, they're trying to open up their own office or do whatever it is that they can do. How did you find where was the moment that you decided, okay, I'm not working in a law firm, but I want to create this platform of storytelling for lawyers?
Yeah, no, that's interesting. I was seeing a lot of Humans of New York, which is a platform.
Right.
Are you familiar with it?
Sure.
And it was coming up in my feed, and I'm like, whoa, this is so interesting. Like people just
Right.
talking in the narrative form about a piece of their life. And like I was like, it just hit me. I'm like, man, like I've had such a journey to like even just get to this job where I'm at now. And make no mistake, my housing authority, they pay for my Massachusetts bar license. I have two other bar licenses that I take care of. And I was like, you know what? Like I want to hear lawyers talk like that. Like I really I want to get them to be like to talk from the narrative about, maybe they'll talk about a case they like, maybe they'll talk about like anything in the law, and maybe they'll talk about themselves, maybe they'll give me the story, like what do you think about the current status of getting jobs, that sort of thing. So that's really when the idea struck me, and I created this like little document that I have somewhere in my emails that I would send off to people like with a bunch of questions. And I started with 5 people I know. I literally could name them right now, that I said, hey, this is what I'm doing. Be brave, like let me know
Right.
what's your story. And I reserved the Instagram account, and that was it.
Do you think? I think that your platform started to take off during COVID. Is that right?
I don't know about COVID. What year was that? That was like 2020, 2021.
21.
Yeah, so I actually started the podcast February 2020, so that might have helped it a little bit. Yeah.
I mean, you had Gloria Allard, Alan
Yeah.
Dershowitz,
Right.
Ben Crump. Quite honestly, how did you manage to pull that off? I mean, you really were a nobody at that point
Oh,
on
thanks.
on
Well, I
on
mean, I still am.
online.
I
I mean,
still
let's
am,
be,
but thanks, bud.
but now you're a big shot. But how
I'm
did
a
you
big
manage?
shot. Okay.
How,
Well,
how, how did you manage to get them early on when
right. Well, so I liked Lisa Bloom. Like I was kind of a Lisa Bloom fan. I'd seen her on TV, and like I reached out to her people, and like this guy, like she got on my show, and then we had a great time. Like we had a great episode. Like she's
Yeah.
really cool, and like I remember emailing her. I was like, hey, like, do you have anybody else like that's known that maybe I could? And she was like, oh, did I introduce you to my mother? I'm like, oh, she's like, I meant to do it. I'm like, actually, you haven't. And she wrote me like a beautiful email. Like either her
Right.
mother or wrote me a really nice email. And so Gloria, she came, or Miss Alred, she came on, and that was awesome. And then with Ben Crump, you said, so
Hmm.
Crump really, he started getting like really big after I had him on the podcast. Not because of me, obviously,
Right.
but he was just
Maybe.
like, because he had big cases. And there was one day I remember I went onto Instagram, I saw he liked like all these photos. I was like, oh,
Right.
that's really cool. Like,
Right.
I got to get this guy on my podcast. And Ben Crump was super nice. He was in a hotel room. His Instagram connection was a little shoddy, but he was really nice, and we had a good talk. And he wanted to come on again, but I couldn't. He DM'd me, he wanted to come on again, but I just couldn't like set it up with his people. And now he was bigger now than he was when I had him on.
I mean, I know that you've had what have you had, about 200 episodes?
Yeah, 225. I'll be
So,
uploading 227.
so you've interviewed hundreds of lawyers, and what do you think? What ignited it? In other words, yeah, I know that it was a bit of an unusual platform. We've never seen anything like that before, and quite honestly, I haven't seen anything like it since. Really, if we're being honest. And so, what is it that you think touched so many people. I mean, you've got a tremendous amount of followers. What do you think you've touched that other platforms couldn't do?
I think like and this sounds so cliche, man, but I think I try to be like my genuine self, honestly, like genuine, authentic. And it sounds cliche, but it's really not as common as you think. You know what I mean? I think people
Yeah.
really try to come across that way, but they just can't. And I did this when I lived in New Haven, Connecticut, and I realized that people were drawn to it. And what I mean by this is that when I was working at the housing authority, I lived at this beautiful building. It was brand new. I had a studio apartment right downtown, and I made friends who were like Yale medical residents, and they were doctors, and they were doing big things. A lot of like really interesting people, but and they would be into like dining, and this is like where I found out like people go to like more places to eat than like an Applebee's or like a Chili's.
Right.
So, but I would just like be myself, man. We'd go to the pool, we just like I would not try to be anybody I wasn't. And I think people are just like kind of drawn to that. They like when you're not weak and vulnerable, but they like when you're just kind of like yourself and you're not trying to, over tell them a better story that they're telling or just tell them you make more money than they're making or like, I think that's part of it. I really hope that people see me as somebody who supports them in the industry and that will connect them to the right person that they need to know.
So, since you started your platform, Meta, whether it's Facebook or it's Instagram, has exploded. And there are so many people that are trying to create platforms of various sorts, lots of lawyers. So I'm going to ask you for a moment, and I know you're always honest because you are. I'm going to ask you to be honest again. And you and I have spoken about this. When you see a lawyer trying to go viral with a staged reel or a fake vulnerability post, what goes through your head?
Well, look, I mean, I think in a sense we're all trying to go viral, right? Because I think we'd all like to get to a point where we're getting like thousands of views, we hit that like crazy mark where our thing just keeps getting shared and keeps going and going and going. So, I don't blame anybody for doing it. I really don't. And I think there's a very small universe of lawyers that are out there doing that. I mean, I think there's millions of I don't know how many lawyers there are in the US, but I think we've talked about how the Instagram is kind of like high school and the community is kind of like a big high school, but I just think that people are out there trying to, they're just trying to do their best. And yes, there are people out there that they appear in like every photo. They're trying to have a picture next to like Neil loves this. They try to have a picture like
Well,
next.
they're always want to take a picture with you for sure. I know
Well,
that.
hey, I don't mind that, but like they try to, they try to take a picture like next to like the person that has this firm that's bringing in this, and like they try to jump in the LinkedIn, and they're trying to make them, themselves look very righteous, or they're virtual signaling. I think that's the
Yep.
word.
Yep.
But yes, we see that a lot, and but I think the majority of people are just trying to be like heard. But look, everybody wants, I mean, I would love my stuff to go like to all the lawyers out there. I mean, I'm not.
Well, you've certainly have been able to do a really good job at doing that just by being yourself. So, if we
Yeah.
want to talk about ego, which I think is disproportionately a characteristic of most lawyers, and I understand ego is built into most of us that are lawyers, but often the egotistical part of our lawyer, of who we are, really spreads into all other areas of our life. So, you know, in a profession built on ego, you built a platform that lifts other people.
Mhm.
Have you ever felt like the guy that's been overlooked, like the guy that's behind the screen, or do you actually prefer being in that situation?
Um, yeah, I mean, sometimes it's thankless, a little bit, but I
Hmm.
don't mind. Like, I think, I love like being able to connect with these people and like share their stories and like get them to be. I feel like if somebody shares their story, they've immediately connected with me, and they might not take it like that, but I immediately feel like, they even Neil. I don't know if you know this, but even when I have a new follower on lawyer stories that looks like a lawyer, looks legit, I will send them a DM and say welcome. I
Right.
haven't really said that often, but because I forget, but I do that because I believe in the power of community. I don't feel like I'm like overlooked or anything. I'm just, I set out to do something and like this is what I'm doing. I mean, I just when we have sponsors and stuff, I just hope people. The way I think of things is like I hope people wouldn't look at me as like a sellout because I'm trying to, I have like a membership community now, and like we're doing like the podcast packages, and like we have all the, we have these things. So that's more how it's like kind of reverse, I kind of think about that stuff.
So you've actually turned lawyer stories into a movement. So now what? How do you
What do you mean
scale?
by movement, Neil?
Well, look, you've got a lot of people who are following you when you have events. People are coming to see you, coming to see you and talk to you, and so you have over 50,000 followers. So how do you scale a platform that's built on intimacy without losing?
Yeah, no, I mean, I just think it's all done organically. You have to do things organically. There's no way you're going to be able to meet all 50,000. I mean, I'd love to. I mean, I'd love to go on the Lawyer Stories tour one year and just like with Neil, 4 events, whatever. And
Yes, I
just,
know you want to go do a world tour, right?
I would love to. I'd love to make a t shirt. I mean, I've seen it on Instagram. People are doing this. Let's make a t shirt and like go on tour and do our events. But yeah, I mean, there's no way to like meet everybody, so that's why I try to welcome people. And occasionally, I'll go through. It's kind of like a distraction for me. Like if I need to like kind of get away into my little like lawyer stories world and like get away from something, I'll like look at my followers and I'll go through and I'll be like, oh, maybe this person wants to be featured. But generally, people are emailing me to like get on the show, and I do it like I have a lot of legal marketers sending me emails, and that's kind of how I wish all those people would check out all the stories, but I don't think they're all there for that.
So, in a recent Harvard study, they found that lawyers are probably the loneliest professionals in America. Meanwhile, most legal panels are talking about SCOTUS opinions and decisions, and you're having rooftop mixers and parties in hot nightclubs in New York, Miami,
Who
Boston,
is?
LA. You are. So, I'm just trying
And
to
you
figure out.
love every minute of it, Neil.
I do. I do. I'm not going to say it, but I want you to answer this because this is your creation.
Yeah.
So, do you have the secret sauce, giving lawyers what law school never did?
Which would be what? What do you mean?
Community. You're giving people a social community, which let's be honest, a lot of young people, and the people that follow you often are younger,
They are.
and younger people feel more lonely than ever.
Well, yeah. I
So,
mean, look, Neil, I think one thing so I'm a big believer that things evolve, right? Whether it's the podcast, whether it's how, you're doing your podcast, you might decide in a month, like, hey, I need to do this or I need to do that. I'm a big believer in things evolve, especially with lawyer stories, and I will let that take place. So when I started the membership, I was like, hey, this is for like everybody. But what it's turned out to be really is what I never had. And I say that in one of my posts. It's really like just kind of giving people a positive exposure, giving them mentorship, and helping them out. Like you've been fantastic with our roundtables. Like we need
it's
to
been
probably
great.
put you on the next post, like for the roundtable. We got to pick a date. Actually, yeah, you got to give me a date for this month. But you've been fantastic. I want to give people like for minimum cost, like being able to come in and like go and talk to people and ask their questions. I want people to come to me and be like, hey, like this is the type of law I'm doing. Like, do you know anybody who does this? Like I get that a lot. You know what I'm saying? Of course, I'd like to get clients that I could send out as a referral, but I know your question is like a lot of young people, but I think we need that. I think we need somebody to come in and like have these events that are like not stuffy, that, we sort of give the prompt of like, hey, go like tell your story, that sort of thing.
When I was at the New York event, for example, when you recently had a New York event, had a crazy number of
Yeah,
people.
it was crazy.
So these events are obviously striking a chord. And I walked up to a number of people that were by themselves, whether it was, male, female, and many of them said they had nothing to do. So they found it on, I forgot what a blog that you had it on.
Eventbrite, yeah.
Yeah, Eventbrite. They were saying, well, I had nothing to do and I've never been here before and I'd like to do it. So you're obviously striking a chord amongst young lawyers to try and get out and meet people. So forgetting about the other stuff that you're putting together, which is great, whether it's a round table or it's CLE, what do you think, what's going on? What is missing that these young people are just getting out of their pajamas and
Yeah.
getting and going to party with other people.
Yeah, I mean, I think we all need community and camaraderie. And if you go to one of our events, be expected to talk to somebody you don't know. That's
Right,
what I love about it.
right.
Like we'll get up there and say, "Hey, turn to some in the spirit of lawyer stories, turn to somebody you don't know and tell them a piece of your story." And you once said this, like you can even just say a piece of your story
Right.
and not even like the whole thing,
Right.
and it still builds a connection.
Correct.
So I think people see that the way that we're doing it, they'll see our social media, they'll see that it's okay to like not be that like perfect polished person, even though there are plenty of those, but don't get me wrong. But um
Well,
just
even
be, I think I should, instead of that, strike that from the record. It's okay to like be yourself and come to an event.
sure, and even when I go to some of these events, and I may not know a bunch of people, I'll just say, okay, let me just go straight to this person. I have no idea who this person is, and I'm just going to introduce myself.
Their
And
name's
ninety
bartender.
nine percent of the time, it's a nice conversation,
Yeah.
and it lasts longer than I thought it would,
Yeah.
and it's great. So I
Yeah,
mean,
everybody who goes to these things are just like super into networking, and the vibe has just been impeccable, honestly. And
yeah.
I'm not one to boast for myself, but I will say the vibe has been incredible at these events, and I can't wait to have.
So let's segue into something else. I know you're a big family man. You got a couple of kids. You got a great wife. I met her. She's great. Karen's a great lady. So you're running a you're running a housing department by
Mhm.
day, which is a
Mhm.
big job,
It
and then
is.
you're doing podcasts when you have the time, which
Right.
obviously is taking up more of your time. That's a grind that many people can't wrap their head around.
Yeah.
So what's the trade-off? Is there a trade-off?
No, I mean, that's a great question. I mean, the podcast I do at night, while when the kids usually go to sleep or about to go to sleep, and it's kind of a nighttime activity. Standard times like 8 p.m. Eastern, but sometimes I do earlier if I need to. And also I have a podcast package. I mean, people are they want to sponsor the episode. They want the exposure in front of the community. They want to be part of our newsletter that has 15,000 people in it, and they want to get a clip and be on our social media. So that's a good trade-off. But I will tell you this, Neil. With all that said, when I started the podcast, because I thought in 2020 that we needed to take lawyer stories off the page. I didn't want it to just be like an Instagram account. I wanted it to be more than an Instagram account. And I'll tell you this, when I got behind this microphone, I didn't really have the microphone at the time, but when I started doing a podcast, I was like, whoa, like I love this.
Yeah,
Like this is me.
right.
This is me. And for so long, I couldn't really figure out what I like to do so much, but just to like talk to these lawyers about their life and actually see them make revelations like on during our podcast, and like think about things that they haven't contemplated in years and share their story with us. That's how that makes it all worth it.
Yeah. So I mean, when you have people on your podcast, you know, sometimes they share a story and sometimes they don't. Do you specifically, try to engage them into some kind of backstory? Because it's my belief everybody has a story and everybody has a right to share their story or
Right, right.
not. Do you get this? How do you kind of differentiate between somebody who's going to tell their story or who's going on your podcast to just kind of, you know, put themselves in a spotlight?
Yeah, I mean, that's okay. I think it depends on the guest, right? If you have a really young guest
Right.
and somebody who hasn't been out of law school that long, I think you focus on like a little bit of their story and then a lot about like what they're doing and like what their ambitions are and like what their views are towards the profession. If you have somebody who's been in the business a while, then they might have like more of a backstory, more like inspirations and motivations for people that they want to hear. And you could really dive deep into the story, So I really think it depends on the guest. I don't want to call it a formula, but I kind of know like how to go about each person. I make sure I look up each person and do thorough research and know like certain things about them and like what they're really focused on.
You've seen enough people tell their story, and you're not a psychologist, but what do you think happens when you have a guest on and they start telling their story and it's genuine and it's authentic, what do you
Yep.
think happens psychologically to your guest when they're sharing their story? And what do you think happens to the listener? Why is it so powerful?
Yeah, I mean, I think for the guest, if it goes the way it's supposed to, they really like are thinking about things maybe they haven't thought about in a while, and they're really sharing their story and they're enjoying it, and they kind of get lost in on the clock, like in the time, and they get lost like
Right.
speaking about it, and
Right.
by the time you look at it, it's like, whoa, we've been doing this for half an hour or whatever, and they enjoy it,
Right.
and with the listener, you want people to connect with what they're saying. You want them to be, oh, I had that too. And that all started with the Instagram page. I mean, I had people, if you go way back, and recently I went way back into the archives because the Instagram page was started in 2017. And recently I
Wow.
went way, and we used to get tons of engagement. I don't know if it's like we switched over to a business account. I don't know what happened. But anyway, that's a question for Jenny Quinn. Shout out to her. So like people would be like connecting with what they were saying. I mean, people from across the country would be setting their stories in.
Yeah.
And people from another part of the country would be like, oh, like, whoa, this happened to me type of thing.
Right. I know when I've shared my story and I've been on your podcast and I'm pretty good at sharing my story because I don't
You
know,
have an incredible story, by the way.
thank you. And I find that often that somebody comes up to me at some point, even if it's one person, and says, wow, that was amazing. I went through this. Or somebody says, I read your book and I
Yeah.
related to this chapter, or whatever. And I think that it's not about ego at all, believe me, but it's about
No.
impact. And so
Yeah.
in some way, your platform, because it's more than just a podcast, your platform has made an impact on many people. And I think, that's important to understand the difference between an impact and just throwing a guest on and talking to them. Wouldn't you agree?
Yes. Oh,
Yeah.
totally. I mean, there's been podcasts I've been on where, you could tell that they're just going down the line, and I don't talk bad about anybody. Like
Right.
it's more, it's,
Right.
but that's how some people need to do it. I think it, like I said, I think it really depends on the guest. I think it really, like with you, you have, and I hope everybody has read your books, like Who's in the Waiting Room. I see the picture back there. It looks fantastic. Your studio looks fantastic. Like you really have like a legit, like amazing quintessential lawyer story. But you also want to tell people like it's okay if like you don't, if like you haven't been through trauma and you
Right.
haven't been
Right.
through loss. Like we all have some sort of a piece of a story. And then, you sometimes see people like, oh yeah, I guess like, I did want to do this and then I went that way, and like they kind of connect with it because some people don't think of their story.
Right.
They don't think about it. You have to, it's your job as the podcast host to like bring that out and
Right.
to watch them sort of be like, oh, make that connection.
Do you think that at the explosion of things like Instagram have made what you're trying to do easier or more difficult? Easier because there's so many more people who can come and visit your platform, or harder because there's so much bullshit that is going on, whether you're going to one page or another page, and everybody,
Right. So,
everybody has shiny glitter and, walking around in their aloe, workout gear. And, so
well, yeah, I mean, I know what you're saying. And I think, oh, sorry. Do you want to finish your
no,
question?
no, you got
No,
it.
I think like Instagram was built as a visual sort of platform like that. I remember hearing that when I started Lawyer Stories, and it's true because I would see how some certain people would do versus other certain people, and I could predict what this was back when the engagement was like really, really. I think it was because it was like a personal page, not a business. I don't know, but a few years ago, if you scroll through, you will see the differences. I would be able to predict like what person would do really well on a post and which person was not going to really get a lot of attention. And because it's mostly visual, when people are scrolling through, if you see something that's like delightful to the eye, right? Like you're going to
Right.
stop and like just take a look and maybe read and click the like. But if it's something that's just kind of like normal, regular, perfunctory, like it's just that's you're going to go right through. So that's sort of my feeling with that.
So what's the future look like for Lawyer Stories?
Yeah, well, Neal Goldstein is going to be involved. Obviously, we're going to come out with a book maybe in the next 2 years. We've been talking about now, but I want to continue. I'm looking at what's been really working, right? And I love having the podcast. I want to continue with the podcast. That's one. Two, the events have been ridiculous. I mean, they've been so much fun. Like for me, it's like meeting everybody that I've featured is such a thrill. You know what I mean? Because
Sure.
I'm sitting here in central Massachusetts. I'm doing this job and you know, I look at Instagram and all the dynamic and fun things that everybody else is doing, like in the stories or they say they're doing. But when I tell you, when these people walk through the door, it's just such a thrill, like to meet these people that I've featured like years ago.
Yeah.
So I want to, I love it. And I think everybody's having a good time. I think the sponsors and our partners have enjoyed it. So I think continuing with events is something I want to do. I want to get on an event schedule, which has been a little difficult, but we sort of have like New York down, we have Miami down, we've done Boston a couple times. LA is the one I really, really want to do. We've been offered Toronto, Chicago.
I know that you have a number of lawyers that are overseas.
Yeah, they're overseas. I mean, if I ever go overseas, heck yeah, I'll meet up with some of those people too. But and I hope Neal will be a part of all of it, honestly, because you, like I said, and I'm not just, blowing smoke because I'm on your podcast, but you really have the story, and I know that how much a platform like this means to you. You know what I mean? Like I know not mine in particular, but just like the stories of like, you have a story that's very compelling.
You just said something that's important for everybody to hear. You said, my story, and you kind of downplayed whatever story that you have. But the truth is, look at what you did when you first started talking. You talked about how you weren't doing well in school. You didn't get great grades.
Yeah.
You didn't have to say that. You didn't have to share that, but you did, because that's who you are. And that's what this podcast is about. It's about, hey, let's all be honest. We don't have to all have a giant ego all the time. Let's be real. So there you saw, Benny. Yeah, maybe you weren't sharing a story, but you were certainly being vulnerable, which I appreciate. So, at the end of every podcast, we ask 3 questions. They're quick questions, and they're thoughtful. And so, it doesn't require a long answer, but I'd like for you to give it some thought. First question is, what's the one thing that you would tell a young lawyer listening now, something that you could help them out to be that one lawyer in a world full of lookalikes?
When you figure out what it is that you might want to do and the type of law that you might want to go into, find a person who does exactly that and do not let them go.
Great advice. If you could go back and talk to your younger self, what would you say, knowing everything that you know now?
Boy, that's a tough one. I mean, I would just want to tell myself that, like, everything's going to be okay, and that there's longevity. This is how you're going to be at 40 years old. You have the some sort of feelings at 40, 45, just predicting, like telling yourself like it's going to be okay. Just keep going.
Great. And finally, is there someone that you've lost personally or professionally who you'd want one more conversation with? What would you say to them if you had that moment?
Yeah, I mean, that's boy. Yeah, I mean, I think I never met my grandfathers. I have a couple grandmothers I lost along the way, so I'd probably I go directly to them, really, just to speak to and just to kind of talk to them and tell them.
A lot of people mention their grandparents, so you're in good company. Ben, it was great having you on. Can you tell everybody how they can connect with you? Because when you connect with Ben, you actually connect with him. And
yes,
so
that's right.
So can you tell everybody how they can connect with you?
Yeah, hit us up at lawyer stories at lawyer_stories, and also at bgold1218@gmail.com. That's my email address. And Neal, congratulations on a successful podcast. I love it. You're
Thank
a fantastic host.
And I'm looking forward to, as I always do, to your next event, which I don't know whether it's going to be in California, London, Tokyo, wherever you're your people are, I'm sure you're going to have an event. And so congratulations on the success.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
If something here hits home for you, don't keep it to yourself. Tap subscribe, drop a comment, and share this with a lawyer who needs to really hear it. This is That One Lawyer Podcast. See you next time.